So in building Venture Rhythm, was there any part of the product that you had to remove because users were not using it or it's not relevant to user?
Not yet, at
Okay,
least.
okay.
But it also, because it's bootstrap, we didn't have like resources to build all sorts of features. I think we have a long list of features that ideally we want to build at some point, but we've been very careful, and careful is maybe the wrong word, maybe very conscious about which features we build around, like what do we really need at this point. One thing was because we knew we wanted to work with universities, both because I think it's an important market for us, but also a good market for the platform, because if it's an undergraduate class, you get a few hundred students trying out the platform. So that's great for us to learn what works, what doesn't work, rather than 200 individual entrepreneurs that we really need to find and convince. So we built a feature that's very easy to onboard like groups through one link, and then you as a lecturer or professor have like a list with all your students, and they can submit a version to you for review fairly easily. So we built a few features, or like sharing or collaboration, but we've not really built much else beyond that, because we want to validate that the concept works, the simulation works,
Get
and
feedback.
then get the feedback on that, and then iterate through, rather than building a lot of functions and features that might be nice to have but also aren't essential at this point. So far, I don't know, maybe it's a sign that we haven't built enough, or we've been relatively successful in building out the core of what we need.
Awesome. So who will you say is the ideal user? Is it pre-seed teams? Is it growth stage? Or investor doing portfolio triage?
I think at this point it would be pre-seed or seed stage entrepreneurs or startup companies, mainly because we have one of the features that is coming is about secondary markets, because quite often like your beachhead market isn't necessarily like the biggest market to get into. It's one that's strategically important to then typically expand or go international, or whatever it might be. A lot of companies here might start out in the US and then go to start out here in the UK and then go out to the US. But you might need people there, you might need representation in the US and everything. So it would be a big investment to start there. So for a kind of seed stage company, if you raise that kind of money, that's typically what you would raise the money for like expansion, for scaling. But you have that initial market traction in your beachhead market. You've achieved that. So because we can only model one market at a time, at this point, like entrepreneurs in the earlier stages, where they're really thinking about which market to pick. What is the beachhead market? How do we get into that? How long does it take? Maybe how much investment do we need? What does the cash flow look like over time if we do that? How long of a runway do we might need until we really get into like revenues? So planning out all these things, like that's really where the current strengths are. And they always will be, but there will be additions to that where you can then model like a follow-on market, where you could set a trigger in the simulation that if we reach X% market share or a certain amount of revenue, that you would then start dedicating resources towards like the next market, and you could model that. So I think at the moment we're really focusing on like early stage entrepreneurs, and whether that's first time entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs. I think it might even be easier to use for serial entrepreneurs, because they might already have an understanding of their market and might already know kind of what they're looking for anyway. But ideally, and the feedback has been positive so far, we've built the platform in a way that it also guides particularly first time entrepreneurs through what they need to look at, which are the important aspects of their market, what are the characteristics of the customer or the market that are relevant to their business.
Wow. The questions that I'm going to be asking now will be a bit of sparring question, just to challenge, just to give further, because there will be some people who are listening who are skeptical. I want us to have some couple of few questions that will address their challenges. So, what decision do you think should never be outsourced to a model?
I don't think any decision should necessarily be outsourced to a model. I think that's the first, again, where we go back to like not treating the model as, oh, that's a definite way to go. Even if the model shows you one way or another, I think at the end of the day, you still bear responsibility for the decisions that you're taking. So I think that's the first thing. Like I would never say like use the model to inform your decision making. Use it to as a tool for thinking, as like, okay, this might not work, or if we change this parameter even slightly, like the impact is quite huge. So maybe we just need to do a bit more research to be sure on what to do here, rather than, oh, the model showed us this, we should definitely do this, when it maybe might have a high sensitivity around certain parameters. So I think that is still on you as the entrepreneur to ultimately stand and say, yeah, this is the direction I want to go. I think otherwise, if we think about it, which parts of the business should you model? I don't think there is necessarily anything that you shouldn't model. I think it's just always looking at it with that caveat of, don't treat it as like a forecast is theater unless you can rehearse alternatives. Like if it's just like it's a show, if it's like the one thing, but if we can really play out different other versions of it, then again it gives you confidence that, yeah, maybe it doesn't quite matter what we do now, like both seem reasonable, or everything else being equal, this might be the better choice than the other one. And yeah, we might trust the model, we might trust the simulation and go with that. But equally, if everything in your research kind of points towards one option, the model to another, you might want to think about, like, did we capture everything right? Is this maybe an edge case where the simulation isn't perfect, isn't ideal, isn't useful for us? And maybe there were things when you were completing the inputs for the model that you felt like it's not quite capturing what we need. And that might well be the case, because you can imagine the breadth of different companies there are and where they differ. So there might be explanations for why the model is just not useful for you. And again, it doesn't mean it's not useful at all, but it's just the kind of unique combinations that you feel like it doesn't quite capture where we're unique. So that might be why it doesn't quite show that we'd be successful with the strategy, which then doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Like most likely, like you should still be doing that if all your research, all your knowledge and everything suggests that's the way to go. And in that case, please let us know. So there's maybe other variables we need to capture.